Hello, how's everybody doing today? Happy Monday. This is Mike LaFleche, the professor here at Onshape at PTC, and I'm happy to join you today to go over a live stream here of what's new in Onshape Render Studio for the last season or so. There's been a bunch of updates being added to the Onshape Render Studio on user experience and features that people have been asking for. And it's just a great pleasure to use Onshape Render Studio. Um, when I'm using Onshape, um, let's go to a different screen here so we can see the full screen. Um, when I'm using Onshape Render Studio, I'm thinking about it as if I am a photographer, right? So using Render Studio, you should, simulate a virtual, kind of photography session. That's really what you're doing with your 3D models. It's a great way of, making sure that you get the right feeling and emotion from your product before you go out to manufacturing. It's great to share with, marketing for images and content for your website and collateral and things like that. But it's a rapid prototyping tool as well. You're able to see how it looks before you build something, right? So I really enjoy, the ability to do rendering, inside of Onshape without having to leave a web browser. I'm just on my Mac computer being able to do all this stuff. So, what is Onshape Render Studio? If you're new to Onshape, well, first of all, Onshape is a full cloud 3D CAD system with PDM built in at the core. From your first line sketched, you will have the ability to create parts, assemblies, drawings, sheet metal, frames, assembly instructions. You can do simulation. You can import your circuit boards. Um, you name it. It's a full mechanical CAD system comparable to, things like Creo, SolidWorks, things like that. Except that it runs fully in the browser, in the cloud. There's no files for you to manage or store. It operates like Google Docs as far as like the way you interact with it. You can share, collaborate, uh, the same way you would in Google Docs. And Render Studio is part of the Onshape Professional and the Enterprise package. It allows you to do these virtual photography sessions without melting your computer through your desk or hearing the fans on your graphics card go nuts because the graphics cards are not on your desk. They are in the Amazon AWS. They're NVIDIA GPUs that we're running on AWS, and you're getting extremely powerful graphics capabilities without you having to go out and buy that and maintain it and take care of all the drivers and the stuff that you would have to do to get this on your desktop yourself. So, Render Studio will allow you to create photographs, virtual photographs. It's got a pretty easy workflow. You'll see that here. And it's a collaborative platform, right? Because Onshape's collaborative. You can share your photo with somebody. You can somebody else could take the rendering and work with it. You have all the version control and branching and stuff that Onshape has to try out different ideas. All right. So I promised to give you what was new inside of Onshape Render Studio in the last couple months here, going from winter into spring. It's almost summer. Hopefully, we'll be out to the pool and beaches pretty soon. Let's take a look at some of the updates that have occurred in Onshape Render Studio. So back in there's been a few other updates that have happened. I'm just kind of picking and choosing from some of um, the updates that popped out in my mind as really, really good updates to look at. Um, I'm going to start with the Open VDB volumetric rendering for smoke, fog, and water effects because it's a little bit out there. It's kind of an interesting way of simulating something that you don't necessarily want a 3D model. You don't want a 3D model smoke or water splashing, if you're designing a jet ski and you want to show it in action, this would be a very difficult thing to 3D model, I think, in a mechanical CAD system, right? But let's go over here to our friend Perrin Le Mans car here. Yeah, I always go back to this because it's just a great it's a great demo example for many reasons. It's a large object, you can get inside of it, you can take pictures of it, and kind of like a hero point of view. Um, and you can see when you open up Render Studio inside of Onshape, it's just a tab inside of your Onshape document. It will bring you to a view only mode of essentially what it looked like at the last moment you left the document, right? Because Onshape's saving every step. There's no need to worry about that. It's really quite a pleasure to not have to worry about saving your work, right? It's just always saved. Um, so I'm going to edit that Render Studio, and what's happening as soon as you hit that, it's getting the resources, from AWS. It's loading up all the fine tessellated geometry, inside of this 3D model. So I'm working on a pretty decent sized 3D model here. You even see, it's got a scene behind it. We got lights, LED lights kind of being emitted through this. I've also engaged dark mode right here, so you can turn that on underneath your account here. There's dark mode right there. You can switch between that, right? We'll just let that finish loading up. You'll see a couple of other things here if you haven't looked at Onshape Render Studio lately. The interface has received some love. The scene list and the appearance list have been split, so you have a top and a bottom, kind of like your Onshape Part Studios, where you have the feature list at the top and the parts list at the bottom. In the Render Studio, we have the parts and assemblies right there at the top, just like an assembly, sort of, right? And you have the appearance list at the bottom. So any of the appearances that you've created, in Render Studio will be listed here. By having them split, you're not doing as much scrolling back and forth because quite often you're working between um, the top of the tree, selecting parts. And at the bottom, that's where you're selecting materials that have already been set and interacting with it in the left or the right hand side, where you have these tabs on the right. All right, we should be just about there. All right. Let's just go back to the slideshow here just for a second so we can look at that list of updates. So we're going to talk about OpenVDB volumetric rendering for smoke, fog, and water effects. We're going to talk about the quick texture attachment. So if you have an attachment or like a bitmap or JPEG, and you want to apply it across an entire material that you've already set, you'd be able to do that. And then resetting your appearances to defaults too. We'll show you that in just a second as well. I might have goofed here by leaving that screen. Yeah, I should just leave that screen here just for a second, and then we'll be able to get in to show you the smoke effect. Let me just refresh. I always get little gremlins when I'm doing a live stream. It's just a fact of life. All right, well, I'll be good and just let this one load up. And if this one, gives me a hard time, I'll just I have a bunch of examples, of course, to show you. All right, let's edit that Render Studio. Let it load up that geometry. once again, essentially, I have this at a pretty high resolution, so it looks good. This is something that you can actually control in Onshape. You see that diamond next to the complete LMP1. And that diamond signifies that I've set a higher tessellation quality, for the surfaces. So when you render something, you have a bunch of, tessellation triangles, right, that represent a 3D graphic. This is just something that um all rendering tools, work that way, right? Any kind of 3D graphic, if you think about it, right? You have 3D graphics represented by triangle data, and the closer, the smaller those triangles, the smoother the surface will look. Of course, the rendering algorithms do things to make it even look better than the standard triangles. But if you have a wheel that looks like an octagon, that's a sign that your tessellation quality is too low, and you should probably crank up the tessellation quality, at least on the round objects or things with some kind of surface, or stuff that has very thin walls. Like, like if you had two or three layers, like on this car, there's like a skin layer, then there's a sheet metal layer. There's several layers of this. So if you want to make it so that the geometry doesn't bleed in to one another, you want high tessellation, and that's why it takes a little, moment or two to load up this car. It's a full car, so yeah, wouldn't expect anything else. All right, this is where I come up with a few jokes, right? No. All right, rendering starting. Here we go. All right, we're good to go. So you'll notice at the bottom of the screen is the appearance menu as well as the environment library, right? So these are libraries of textures and environments that you can apply, to your 3D model if you don't want to take the Onshape default color for whatever material was being deployed, right? So if I want to, well, let's take a look at the volumetric effects, and let's just add a couple of textures. I see the front of this nose is just kind of like this plain gray right there. Let's take a look at that first. Apply a material, and what material is on it. How do we know what material is actually in here? So if I select it, you notice that the split tree comes in really handy now, because I can see that it's got the crash box tip component highlighted, and that is appearance 3. Now let's find a new appearance. Maybe we want to make it chrome. I search for chrome. That's the easiest way of finding what you're looking for, I believe, in Render Studio, instead of like drilling through all the hundreds of materials. Just kind of search for what you're looking for. Hopefully you find it. Try a few different search terms. Because it's searching for the word based on the exact phrase in the beginning. So if I did chrome like that, we're going to get a bunch of results. But if you spell the whole word, it's going to give you that. Actually, let me go back to that. Yeah, I think kind of like the brushed uh, look right here. So I'm going to right click on that and assign it. By the way, a bunch of these other things in Render Studio have been added in the last 6 months, like favorites. You can have favorites for your personal account that you're using Onshape with in the Render Studio, but you can also add to your company favorites. So if you like using that all the time and you want everybody in your company using this because it's a standard material, you like your designing tractors and you have a certain yellow that you like to use, you're going to want to have that for everybody to use. And that can be set for everybody in your company, which is amazing, right? Because I didn't have to deploy registry hacks or files to make everybody, in my company work, with the same things. Onshape works with this enterprise or company-based approach where you set up your users and teams and all that, and as part of a company, so everybody gets the advantage of that. All right, so let me click out of here. Let me pick that again. I'm gonna take that part, and I'm gonna assign it to the part. Now, sometimes, if you want to like see, you know, what is established on it, you can go to the appearance tab over here. And I can see the base color is this right here. But if I assign, this part, you see the color changes just like that. And now we get the chrome look on the front. And if you can't remember the name of a part, by the way, like, this is the crash box tip, right? So if I just say tip right there, it makes it wicked easy to find. There's my Boston accent coming through, right? All right. So there's the crash box tip. I got the color right here. And maybe, this might be a little weird, but I could change the color, of the chrome, right? Just go in here and maybe we want like a kind of a different hue on that chrome, give it kind of a cool look like that, right? And if I zoom in, you can see that, right? Let me pick that again, change the color, a little cloudier version of it. All right. So I like the way that looks. Next, let's show you something on that's new. So you can right click on any of those color fields for certain materials, and you can also apply a bitmap file, could be a JPEG as well, to give it a different texture, right? So let me zoom in on it so we can see this a little easier. There we are. And I'm not changing the color. I'm going to right click here and say use bitmap file. So it seems a little weird to right click on a field, but do it. All right. Just right click on that field. You got the image that you can apply to it. And then you can apply all your scale factors and rotations to it. So this was like a tile, kind of texture, that's on here. So we got kind of like this tile-ish imprint, on the chrome. I don't know if Nick Perrin's gonna go for that. So let's but you could change that, of course. And the rotation tiling pattern, if you want to go to, tiling of 3 by 3, let's see what that does, right? You can see that should increase the density of that tiling. So now we got like this tartan, kind of look almost to the chrome. So that's the reset, or that's the quick texture attachment, that we've added to this, right? So pretty easy to just, and what you want to do is you want to upload the texture to your Onshape document. Like here I am inside of my tab list at the very top right here, and I've added this. And let me just hide myself here just for a second. So I've uploaded that JPEG image from a website or whatever. It might have been custom designed or what have you. You can upload those types of things to Onshape, and that's what that JPEG image looks like. All right. Let's go back to the previous tab. All right. Now, maybe I don't like this. I want to go back to the default appearance for the nose. So really easy to do. You can just unassign appearance or simply link to the Part Studio appearance. And that should bring me back. Yeah, there we are. So that's the default Part Studio appearance. Maybe I'll just go ahead and assign the chrome again. I like the chrome. What are these other parts here as well? We got the brake duct inlet. Maybe I want all of my inlets to be chrome. So that's what I do. I search for inlet and I just select everything that is an inlet and assign it. If I zoom out, we should start to see some good stuff here. Yeah, we got all these nice chrome kind of look here. All right, and you can see the wheels are nice and round and everything. That's because my tessellation quality is set pretty high. All right, so that's the tessellation choice right there. You can right click, choose tessellation. Right now it's on fine. There is a very fine and a custom if you really need to go crazy with it. All right. So we're seeing a lot of good stuff. Usability is very good, as you can see, inside of here. All right, let's see what else. Quick texture attachment. We're going to get back to the OpenVDB stuff. Reset appearance to defaults. We saw that. There's some really cool stuff we introduced in April, the beginning part of April, importing scene settings from another render studio that you've worked on, right? You want to use the same exact settings, you'd be able to do that. Also, when you export the actual final render inside of Onshape, you can have it remember those settings because there's a lot of checkboxes you don't want to like have to redo all the time. All right, so let's one more thing, yeah. So yeah, that was the April 4th. So import scene settings, persistent render settings. So how would I do that? How would I bring in settings from another render studio? Well, I can match scene properties. That's a button I have right there at the top from another studio. And let's just open one. I'll go to my light case. All right. We'll edit that studio. It's not a big model, so it'll only take a moment. In the flight case, you can see it's a small subassembly here. All right. So maybe I really like the way this is you know, I like the way the well, let's try it both ways, right? So I'm gonna go to here instead of version in my timeline. I'm actually working on a branch. That's kind of highly recommended, I would say, if you're gonna be doing a bunch of renderings and modifying things to make it look good for a rendering, create a branch. Put renders, versions on that branch. So that way it's easy to find. I'm up to version 13, of my rendering here. I've been, tinkering around with this. And that version will help us now because if I go to my other documents under match scene, recently opened, there's the parent, there's the render studio I'm working with. And now I can import the scene settings and the environment if I want to. I take a second because that image that I'm using in the background is actually a very large image. It's a 8K image. I'll get to that in a minute too and how I apply those images. It's like a 35 megabyte image file. So that's probably what's taking it a little longer, especially in a live stream too. Could also go the other way here too, like match scene properties, other documents, go to the flight case, and it will tell you if you haven't created a version in a while. It's quite handy, right? You're not just going to get whatever. It'll warn you if there's been changes. And I can even create a version from here if I have access to that document. And maybe I want to just get the white environment from that other one. And maybe I am doing it wrong. I don't think I set a version in that anyway, so that's probably what the issue is. Ah, I see. I'm getting different lighting now on this. So yeah, I'm the environment photo isn't here, but the lighting from the photo, I believe, is what's happening here. Yeah, because there's the custom image right now. It was a different image. I have that. If I go to my background choice right here. I have this enable background and disable, right? I can disable it. And now I've overridden it with my custom image. And now I've put my flight case here on the ground. Now, you might ask, how it looks really good. Like how was I able to make this look so easy by putting it on the ground and it looks really nice? I got this thing, you know, zoomed it's sitting on the ground, right? Because that's what's happening here. There's a ground setting, automatic height. I can change, maybe I want the ground to be slightly wet, right? So I make it reflective, not all the way at one, but something like that. Point one maybe. Maybe I want my shadows to be a little harsher because it's bright light in the sun. Maybe two, three. Right. So you got your experiments going on there. We'll go back to one. Roughness you can change. That way it's like the roughness is really nice because it's actually diffusing it, nicely. But yeah, there you go. I mean, that's how you can pull properties in from some other document that you've worked with. Now, if you want a different image, for this, right? Let's work with our car here. I could import another one. And where do I get these really cool images? Well, Onshape has a bunch pre-built in, right? I can let's find one that's outside. I'll right click and say apply lighting and background, and it puts it in here. And the reason why it's putting it in so nicely, like on the ground, is because I have this setting turned on called hemisphere. Like, I can, it's still on the ground in, non-hemisphere mode, but when you zoom in around, it's not moving. Let's look at it from the front here. It's just, not as, well, it's actually not too bad, actually. It's, I shouldn't poo-poo it too much. But, the default images that are here are kinda, like, not 4K, as you can see. It might be fine if you're, doing some kind of bokeh image, like when you turn depth of field on, you just go to depth of field, you enable it, and this is what makes you a photographer, right? You're just gonna say, I want a certain camera lens, f-stop, right? I want f4, and I'm gonna focus on the driver mirror here. But you can see, that without a 4K background, it doesn't look great. The rendering looks fantastic, but the images around it are a little lacking, I would say. So I would just browse to get a custom image file. This is an EXR file, an HDRI image that lights the model, but also gives you the the environment right there too. How do you get one of those? Well, I go to polyhaven.com for that kind of stuff. Go to polyhaven.com. It's a free site, but they encourage you to make a donation. I have nothing to gain by this. I just enjoy their website, and they have a ton of great, all the same HDRI images that are in Onshape come from this, place essentially. And I'm gonna, just search for a track. Yeah, well, maybe we'll put it in a cart club here. And if I want to get that, I want to get it in at least 4K. I can get 8K, but you can see the file sizes get pretty big. We'll go 4K because we're in a live demo here. And let's change this. You can see we get our other image back again. I'm gonna click that right here. Just click the image, and you can upload by choosing the import option. There's the cart club. And now it's importing that HDR image right in here. Now, if you don't see it here, it says, oh, there were 5 changes, right? Onshape Render Studio is all version controlled, right? So you might need to just create a quick version. Did I? Oh yeah, there it is. Cart Club 4K. The reset over here. Browse to my image. What am I doing wrong? Oh yeah, I'm looking at version 6 and I'm in version 14. That's the issue. There we are. All right, so we got the cart club here. And we can yeah, this is just it's like a 360-degree image, right? So you just got to kind of play around, with the rotation. And I find, when I use that hemisphere look, it helps me kind of just, not worry about it as much. I just kind of rotate where I think it's going to look good. And I'm right clicking and dragging just to kind of. And by the way, this thing works with a 3D mouse. So I'm using my 3D mouse now. It gives you much finer control. All right. And then there's a nice reflective look. We'll just go at 0.2 reflectivity, roughness 0.04, and you'll see it kind of wash out. And shadow, that's fine. So it's looking pretty good now. By the way, these lights, it's just a material that you can apply to your parts. And I like the way that looks, so I'm going to hit the render scene button. And it will give you an opportunity to, select the final output. If you have Onshape Render Studio Advanced, which is an additional purchase, it's not that expensive, but it will let you increase the final output to a very extremely high resolution if you were printing on billboards or posters or things like that. But 1080 images usually fine for web and print. And then you get to choose, what output you want. Do I want the background enabled or not? And what's your final output quality? And I'll say download image. Now, what's new is that Onshape Render Studio will remember all of your render options now. The next time you go to a render, in another session, it'll just remember the all those choices that you see right there at the top of the screen. So that's what that option that I was mentioning before was, the the persistence when you output a render. All right, once that's finished rendering, and it's going to be less than a minute, full render. I'm doing this on my MacBook. I'm doing this over a live stream. There's a lot of things that would make this go wrong if I was using a desktop-based rendering tool. I would probably need some kind of $10,000, computer with graphics card and things like that to do this quality of work so quickly. But I'm doing this on a Mac. You could do this on a Chromebook if you really wanted to. All right, let's take a look. All right, it says rendered successfully, and I told it to render to the document or as a separate download. I can't remember. It usually puts them in at the top level right there. But, if it's not there, I probably told it to go to my downloads folder. And there it is. Yeah, let me get out a full screen here so I can show you the output. And there it is, right? So pretty nice. I could spend a lot more time on the depth of field and everything to make this even better, right? But without a lot of work, I was able to do that pretty easily right here in front of you. By the way, all your depth of field settings are persistent. Um, Even with that render screen on. So I'm going to say I want this to be 1.4 and point at the driver side. Now, what if you want a different lens? Now you can go to field of view and just say, oh, I don't, you have a 35 millimeter lens. Well, I'm going to say I want a 16 wide angle, right? Maybe I want a 50, and that's way easier than like typing in the field angle, which we used to be able to, have, but focal length is just easier. All right, let's wrap this up with a little smoke show on the back of this thing. Pardon me. Let me turn off my depth of field. I usually only turn that on right at the end, right? Because it's like, you need to like interact with the model. So I want to insert a piece of geometry. Now I could do that just right here. I could insert from my part studio. I have some props, or I could set up a scene that already has this prop in it. But it's just a big cylinder that I'm dropping in to this design. And I'm just labeled it burnout. And it's just this part, like way, behind here. And I've just created a cylinder and extruded it. Just a really big cylinder. And all I have to do is assign a special material to it. So I have it in my favorites here. Oh, thought I did. Maybe not. Let's just clear that out. Say VDI. All right, I'm just gonna pause just for a second. Just give me 1 second. I need to pause for just for a second. Okay, I'm back. My apologies. Had to take care of something at the door. All right. So OpenVDI is a way of assigning a texture. OpenVDB, right? It's a open system for designing 3D graphics, mathematically, of course, through code. And there's a bunch of samples. If you go to, openvdb.org/download, you will have some samples that you can use. And you could probably find more. But, there's like, smoke and things like that that you can apply. So I've downloaded some smoke and VDB. There we are. Open VDB volume is an appearance. And I'm going to assign it to that cylinder. That's in the, it could be a cube. I just created a big thing, essentially. And it comes in, it looks like a huge, like glass block. What you need to do is just, select it in here, go to my appearance list. And, it's got a, where is it? index of refraction right here, right? IOR 1. Let's set that to 0 because it's not going to be made of glass. So it will be, kind of clear here in a second. Oh, there we are. Or 1. I should just say 1, right? 0. All right, all right. I'm back. All right, here we are. So we'll apply the open VDB data, and I have the smoke already uploaded to the document. Same way, same method as before. You upload the graphic right to the Onshape document. Make sure there's a version, and you have it. So smoke 2 VDB. And what you can do, I tried this earlier. I was having very good luck with it. Change scale factors, of course, here as well. Wonder what I'm doing wrong. I know I'm missing something in the when you do this stuff live, it obviously does this sometimes. Index or refraction for the surface if used mesh larger than volume. All right, let me go to the one that I have finished because on Shape's version control, I can go back to a previous version. And I can show you that I've already done this. On the slideshow here. So, like, this is what it would look like, right? You create the volume and the smoke. You can change the color. There are options for that. But it essentially gives you a static image, of the smoke looking, as it should look. Of course, I'd have to reload that to get to that. My apologies, team. I won't be able to show that particular example live at this second. There are examples of on the form that I have built in the past, that little coffee cup. Go to the forms right there. And you go to new and Onshape. And I believe it was, what version was it? February 21st. There's February 21st. Oh, here's a nice effect right here with some AI rendering thing that Michael Pasco is able to show off. That looks great. He runs a render contest, so definitely get in touch with Michael or on the forums here. Here's the example here of kind of like a steam effect here, where I have that. So how do you apply it? You pick the part. I set the IOR as 1. And that really is about it. Oh, 1.2. Why did I change it to 1.2? I'm second guessing myself. But anyway, that's how you apply it. Try it out. Please let us know how it works. Let us know in the forums. Comment here. Happy to look into that further and try to answer some more questions on that. I still need to figure out how to create those images. It's programmatic. I'm using some default ones off the shelf, but there are ways of programming different textures. Outside of Onshape, and then you would bring that VDB file into Onshape. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today, everybody. Field of view control, Dual-Pane list. Lots of different things added, in Onshape Render Studio, right? You're going to be able to create rendering way faster than, you're not tethered to a certain machine. You can do this from any machine. If you want to try it out, just open Render Studio. It's a tab right inside of your Onshape documents. You need Pro or Enterprise Onshape to gain access to those resources. You'll be able to collaborate and share this much easier than prior. And, you're going to get good comments on the level of quality, of your visuals. So that's really what I wanted to make sure you saw today inside of Onshape Render Studio. And hopefully picked up a few tips or tricks along the way. I'm happy to answer questions on the comments as they come in. So thanks again. I hope you all have a great rest of your day and a great afternoon. All right. Have fun.